Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Penna, Mr. Navarro.
Good morning.
Call the meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Members of the panel today are, to my left, Mr. Marcel Laurendaux, to my extreme left, Richard Whitbread, and I'm Robert Buss. The assessor today is Mr. David Penner, and the recording secretary is Michelle Penner. We will be hearing applications for the revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matter must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council in independence of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of assessed exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. All information on public hearings, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record.
David Thomas George Penner.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Can you state your full name, please?
Marcel Navarro.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, I assume there's nobody here for item number 4, 1895 Wellington Avenue. So we will move on to item number 5, 1935 Sargent Avenue. Mr. Penner, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The roll number is 0704218000. The address is 1935 Sargent Avenue. Value in the roll for 2020 is $9,903,000. There are 3 buildings on site, 1 premise, and the years built range between 1962 and 1997. The effective year built is 1994. The wall heights range from 12 to 22 feet. The land area is 731,066 square feet. The plan area is 106,703. The leasable area is 113,864, and the land plan area is 6.85, which is very good. This is property occupied by Perlator Inc. There's 2 buildings on site, 1926 Sargent, which is a maintenance garage. This is the one that was built in 1962. It was added on in 1977. There are 22,400 square feet on that building, and that building has airside access at the airport. The other building is 1935 Sargent. This one was built in 1997 for 77,548 square feet of warehouse space. There's also a 2-story office on site, 2 stories at 6,755 square feet each. The total leasable area of this property, 1935 Sergeant, is 91,058 square feet. So the total of the two is 113,864. Or pardon me, 113,458. Turning to page 2. The subject property has a lease in place, which is Perlator, who is the lessee tenant, and they pay a net rent of $6.26. The details are shown there. This property sits on a land lease from the Airport Authority, and the details of the land lease are there. At the bottom of my page 2, this property was purchased by the current owners as part of the Slate Office REIT portfolio sale in late 2015. And the cap rate derived from that sale is 6.9%. If we turn to page 3, I'll show you the details of the Slate Office REIT portfolio sale. The properties are listed there on the left side. The gross leasable areas are shown, and in all cases we use the actual 2015 NOI as per the mailer, with the one exception being 1935 Sergeant, where we didn't have 2015 info, we used the 24. So 683, 883 is the 2014 NOI. So adding up the net operating incomes from each property and dividing by the total sale price of the portfolio, as you can see, the calculation at the bottom gives us a cap rate of 6.9%. And the subject property was part of that portfolio sale. If you turn to page 4, you can see some of these properties were purchased and subsequently sold by Narland, who was the purchaser. And when they sold the properties, they did disclose what they initially paid for them, and the allocations are shown there. So we have some of the allocations, but we don't have all of the allocations of the $47 million. Turning to page 5, this is the press release issued by Slate Office REIT, which tells us they sold 12 industrial properties in Winnipeg. The details of those properties are shown on page 6. The total square footage is 516,495. On page 9, this is a page from the annual audited financial statements of Slate Office REIT. Again, it confirms that there was 12 properties sold for $47 million, and the date of the sale was December 21st, 2015. Turning to page 10, we have some rent comparisons ranging from $613 to $1464. 1950 Sergeant is right next door to this property. It's occupied by another courier company, and their net rent is $1464. The range of the three comps is from $613 to $1464 square foot. Turning to page 11, we have our income valuation workup. And this is a model-driven workup. We used a model rent of $6.47 square feet against the leasable area of $113,864 to derive the potential rent. From that, we applied a vacancy loss of 2.5%, expenses at 2%, to derive the net operating income of $693,241. To that, we applied a cap rate of 7% to derive the assessed value of $9,903,000. So the cap rate we selected is model-driven and derived from our cap rate study. Just want to point out that the model-driven NOI is a little bit lower than the actual NOI reported. If you'll turn to page 21, this is the mailer submitted to us, and we can see that the NOI reported is $710,895, and our model-driven NOI is a bit less than that, so a little bit conservative at $693,241, but certainly in line with that. And as I noted, the cap rate derived on this Slate Office REIT portfolio sale was 6.9, and 7% is certainly in line with that. Turning to page 13 is the City of Winnipeg's cap rate table. shows the range of cap rates in the city of Winnipeg, ranging from 5.5 to 9.8. This cap rate, 7%, falls within the 20th to the 80th percentile. It's also supported by the outside sources within the range shown there by Colliers. It's 6.5 to 7.25. 7 falls within the range, and it's also supported by the other outside sources. Turning to page 15, we have some aerial views of the property. So on page 15 at the top, that's the distribution warehouse. That was built in 1997, and that's on the north side of Sargent. On page 16, these are overhead views of the garage with airside access, and this is the portion that was built in 1962 and added on in 1977. A couple of different views are shown on page 17. These are the maintenance garage on the air side on page 17. Page 18 goes back to the distribution warehouse. You can see towards the bottom of the building there, that's the two-story office portion. And a couple more views of the property. On page 20, this is from Narland's website, where they give some details of the property. You note that it's a single-tenant industrial building, single tenant being Perlator, 113,864 square feet. They note that there's excellent access to the airport and major traffic arterials, 32 dock and 16 grade level loading doors on this property. Page 21, and we've already had a quick glance at this. The rent income is the net rent at $712,277, and we can see this flows into a net operating income of $710,895. So it should be noted that on this property, nearly 100% of the expenses are recovered by the owners, which is a factor in us using 2%. 2% more than covers any shortfall on this property. Page 23 just shows Perlator as the lessee tenant and the details of the lease there. We've already talked about that, and it's 626 net. Towards the back is our addenda from page 26 to 31. Most of you have seen this many times over. I don't need to go into that. So essentially, our model has done a good job of predicting the NOI on this property. It's a little bit conservative, if anything. We see that almost all the expenses are recovered by the owner, so a 2% expense allowance for that is adequate. And the cap rate at 7% is in line with the portfolio cap rate of 6.9, and also supported by our cap rate study overall. So I would ask the panel to confirm the assessment for 2020 at $9,903,000.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, if you have any questions of Mr. Penda's presentation, you're welcome to it.
Have you been inside this building?
I have not.
And everything is model generated? There haven't been any adjustments to it?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, the cap rate information that you disclosed on page 3, is the calculation at 6.9% a sum of the properties that you were able to get information on?
We were able to get information on all of them, income information.
Okay. So 6.9 is what you calculated?
Yes.
Is this something that the department did, or you yourself did?
I've put these numbers together myself.
Those are my questions.
Thank you. We'll see if the panel has any questions. Mr. Whitbread?
No questions.
Mr. Lorendo?
On your page 3, when you did them, did you do individual cap rates for each property? You just did a
No, I
grand total?
I did a global cap rate here.
Shouldn't there be an individual one for each one? Because some of them might be older, some might be newer. some might be
I would think there'd be variance between them, but we don't have the sales allocation on all of them. So we could demonstrate the cap rates on the ones that are there, but we chose to do an overall cap rate.
We're just getting the model out of it, basically.
Well, I mean, we just don't have all the information, so, I mean, we could calculate those ones if you wish.
No. I mean, it falls in line with your cap rate study that you've got anyway, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Good. I have my questions later.
Thank you. And where did the allocations come from?
If you'll turn to page 4, so the purchaser of these properties in December of 2015 turned around and sold some of them, and when they sold them, they disclosed the original purchase price, i.e. the allocation.
Oh, okay.
So at the top of page 4, we see 1336 Sargent purchased in January of 16. I guess that's the final closing date, 4.4 million, and they turned around and sold it later for 5 million. So only when they sold it did they disclose the original allocation.
They sent that information to the assessment
This is on
department?
their website
Oh, I
under
see.
disposals of property. So I guess it's for the benefit of their investors.
Okay.
This is a private company as far as I know, but they have private investors. So they're just demonstrating that they bought it for 4.4 and sold it for 5.
Okay, and you're saying on the front page that there's 3 buildings?
Well, what we count as buildings, there's 2 buildings. The first one I mentioned, 1926 Sargent, originally was built in 62 and added on in 77. So while it's one connected building, we show it as 2, and then the other one is one complete building.
And these buildings are across the street from each other?
Yes, they are.
But they're on the same roll number?
That is correct. And as I mentioned, one has airside access, and the other doesn't.
Airside meaning access to the airport.
Access to the runway, yes.
And one other question about the mathematics here. So you use $6.47.
Yes.
And the amount reported was $6.26. But then when they, on the information they sent in, it's over, which comes to, let me get this figured out. Yeah, they're reporting 712,277 and you're using 736.
Right, so our model rent is slightly higher than their actual rent. However, if we flow through to the bottom, our NOI, after applying model expenses, is 693, which is a little less. So it's a little high in the top end and a little lower on the bottom. Net operating income, but overall the model has effectively predicted the NOI. If anything, it's a bit conservative.
And you mentioned that the land to plan area at 6.85 is a good ratio.
It is considered to be very good.
Thank you very much. That's all my questions. Mr. Navarro, if you would like to take us through your information.
Actually, I have some rebuttal regarding the cap rate calculation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you please turn to page 5 of the report there, which is the last page, we have a summary of the sale as well that we constructed. Now, to the right column, the right-hand column, you'll see the 2018 original assessment. So this is providing for an imputed cap rate based on actuals observed. So we have three estimates here. One is the market cap rate that we've developed, which is 7.91. An actual cap rate less 7% non-recovered, and an actual cap rate based on the observed sales. Now, in none of these instances are we anywhere close to what the assessor has imputed through their calculation. So we have, again, we've also constructed a model here based on a market approach and an actual approach. And in the actual cap rate approach, we have calculated a capitalization rate of 8.46 for the portfolio. Now, based on the allocation that I observed on the first one, which is 891, 895 Century, we didn't have the allocation amount, but if we take that 315,050 actual net operating income for 2015 and divided by the 4.4, we get a 7.16 capitalization rate on that one. So I would say that just from this quick observation that there's probably an underestimate of the capitalization rate in this case.
Open for questions. Okay, let's see if Mr. Kenner has any questions of this rebuttal evidence.
Sure. Have you calculated the cap rates on the other two with allocations?
I haven't, but I can quickly go through those also. This 130 Lowson is 6.65, and 1336, 1340 Sargent is 6.34.
Okay, so obviously we can see a range in cap rates if we're to do them
Individually, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this has come up many times in previous hearings, and you've included two additional properties that weren't part of the portfolio sale, that being 2019 Sargent Avenue and 1950 Sargent Avenue. The press release from Slate Office REIT and the audited financial statements clearly states there were 12 properties. Why? What makes you believe that Slate Office REIT also sold these properties as part of the $47 million?
So the explanation is actually on page 1 of the report. So if you turn to page 1 here, I can quickly go over it, and the city assessor has included, the purchaser's website confirms that among its holdings are the properties located at 2019 Sargent Avenue and 1950 Sargent Avenue, which all this group includes as part of the portfolio sale. Status for both 2019 Sargent Avenue and 1950 Sargent Avenue is on land lease from the Winnipeg Airport Authority. Altus Group has revised the capitalization rate from 3.3 to 7.87, including the expense allowance for non-recoverable expense at 7% to reflect the additional expenses associated with the land lease payment.
Okay, I see that Norland did indeed purchase those properties, and I don't dispute that. But are you aware that the vendor on those properties was not Slate Office REIT, that the vendor was Slate Management, a different corporation?
I believe Slate Management and Slate Office are associated with each other. They're entities of each other.
They are associated, but they're different companies. Right?
I believe there's still that association.
Right, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, Slate Office REIT never owned these properties. So how could they have sold them to Norland? And I'm not saying Norland didn't buy them. They weren't purchased by Slate, they weren't sold by Slate Office REIT, and they weren't part of the 47 million. So by adding those net incomes in and applying them against $47 million, it would be misleading, would it not?
Well, it's a matter of opinion. We've presented this, I believe, in previous cases as well. I would just beg to differ with you that there is an association there with these two companies.
Right, and I acknowledge the association. Slate Management owns 30% of Slate Office REIT and manages Slate Office REIT. However, the interesting thing is, you also include in your portfolio, Slate Office portfolio, you show 2595 McGillivray Boulevard in there, but you haven't included that income or included it as part of the portfolio sale. And why would that be?
Who was that sold to?
Well, it's listed on your page 24.
It wasn't
Why
sold
is
to
it-
Norland, though, was it?
Yes, it was.
It was at the same time?
Right. And that's the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is that another agent submits that was part of the portfolio sale. All the evidence points to 12 properties for $47 million, the audited financial statements. How could it be that there's no disclosure of that sale anywhere? Unless you can provide that, I would welcome that. But all the official evidence, public documentation shows 12 properties for $47 million, not 14 and not 15, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, let's see if the panel members have any questions on the rebuttal evidence. Mr. Lorendo?
No.
Nothing? I have no questions either. Thank you. So we will proceed with your evidence, Mr. Navarro.
If you turn to page 3 of the property report, again, this is 2 buildings. Consists of 2 buildings, one located at 1926 Sargent and the other at 1935 Sargent Avenue. The tenant is Purelator. The 1926 Sargent was constructed in 1962, a 1-story masonry building with a 16-foot wall height and a gross area, again, of 22,400 square feet. 1935 was constructed in 1997, 77,548 square feet, a 2-story office portion with 67.55 per square feet, with a total building area of 91,058 square feet. Again, this is on the north side of Sargent Avenue, does not have west side access. On page 4, you can see an overhead map. And on page 6, we've gone with rent of $6.36, fairly close to what the assessor has given. The vacancy is a typo. The vacancy that we went with is 2.5%, 3.75 per square foot. For shortfall, non-recoverables, as you all know, we stuck with 7%, and we used a capitalization rate of 7%. On page 8, you can see the summary of this. Produces an income value of $9,228,157. And I'm open for questions.
I have no questions.
Panel members, Mr. Lorendo?
On your 7%, what were you using for the reason for that? Seeing as everything else seemed to be recovered, was that just for the lease of the land, the 7%? Because everything else seemed to be recoverable under their sheet.
If you go with actuals, yes, that is recoverable. However, in terms of the rent, we've said that the rent is at market. So again, we're still going by a fee simple perspective. So we allocated a certain amount for vacancy, a certain amount for non-recoverables, a certain amount for shortfall.
How come nothing shows up for the lease cost? Shouldn't that show up somewhere on their paper? Sorry, leasing the land off the airport authority. Well,
Yeah.
What page are you looking at?
on their sheets, on yours, I guess, there's no lease in there, is there? There's no land lease cost?
Yeah, it's shown on page 21 in my brief. It's shown below the net operating income.
Oh, my, so it's below it. So it's not taken off the NOI.
No, and it wouldn't be, as Mr. Navarro said, we have fee simple interest calculation, so deducting the lease would be akin to deducting mortgage interest. You wouldn't do it.
Under utilities and maintenance, that includes all their snow clearing and everything with that 14,856 there?
Is that the
That's
question for
recoverable.
me?
For Mr. Navarro.
Under recoverables,
Yeah. They don't show any costs for any of the maintenance. They pick up zero on maintenance?
well, they're recovering something for maintenance, whether it includes snow clearing, all of that, cleaning. I'm not sure. It's a rather large lot, so it would be kind of a small amount. So they may not be recovering all of it. But again, that's not based on anything that I'm observing here.
Okay.
And my guess on that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is that Perlator likely pays those costs directly, so they're not paid by the owner and then recovered. I would imagine that Perlator's paying those directly.
Okay. Mr. Whitbread?
Nope.
Is it a negative factor that the office building is, and the other one is across the street, not access to the airport, to the runways?
I don't think it is.
And I see you, although in your rebuttal, your cap rates were at one was over 8 and a couple is 7 something, but you've chosen to use 7% even on your work up here for valuation.
I think we can stir both properties together. I think 7 is the first.
Okay, that's all my questions. Any summation, Mr. Penman?
As I said in my presentation, I believe our model has done a good job of predicting the NOI. If anything, it's a bit on the conservative side. This is an example of all the costs, or 99% of the costs being recovered. 2% in our opinion is justified, and we think that that is fair.
Very good. Mr. Navarro, final words?
Again, we approach everything from a fee simple perspective, so we're looking at what the market is doing, not necessarily what the specific property is doing. So in that sense, we adjusted for those market components.
Thank you. That concludes item number 5.
Yeah, we'll do another one. Can we take a 5 minute?
Yes, we'll take a short break.
Well, we'll clear out anyway.
Call the meeting back to order. Good morning, Mr. Neufeld.
Nope.
And when everybody is ready, we will continue with item number 7, 2555 Saskatchewan Avenue.
Can you state your full name, please?
Rocky Neufeld.
Do you affirm that the evidence about the witness hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It is a separate world. Cast and show that I think you have to read it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We will, Mr. Penner, if you'd like to take us to item number 6, to move it into the roll, 1935 Sergeant.
Oh, certainly.
Please, yeah, we have to have it in the roll on paper.
All right. So item number 6 is file number 19-273. This is the appeal by Colliers International on the roll number 0704218000, 1935 Sergeant. The value in the roll is $9,903,000, and we ask that it be confirmed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. You're asking us to confirm the
That's
confirm?
correct.
Thank you very much. Take that under advisement, and we will move on to item number 7.
Sorry, no, I retract that, not to be confirmed, because I would,
Yes.
if you're going to make the change based on the previous presentation, to carry forward on to this one.
Yes. Okay. And that will bring us to item number 7, 2555 Saskatchewan. When you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is file number 19-4353. The roll number is 07-569-135785. The address is 2555 Saskatchewan Avenue. This is property owned by MacDon Industries. Value in the roll for 2020 is $13,006,000. The details of the property are shown there. This property was built. This building was built in 2015. The wall heights range from 22 to 40 feet. The land area is 684,897. The plan area is 110,700, and the gross floor area 127,200. The land plan area is 6.19, which is very good. The property owner purchased the land on December the 2nd, 2014 from HMQ for $1. The sworn value of the land is $6,500,000. The state-of-the-art parts distribution center had a construction value as per the permits of $17,951,000. The income derived value of the property is conservative in light of the land value and declared project value, which is over $24 million. I therefore recommend that the 2020 assessed realty value be confirmed at $13,006,000. There's nothing of interest on page 2, so if we turn to page 3, we have some rent comparisons there, ranging from $6.26 a square foot to $14.64 a square foot. Turning to page 4 is our income workup. The leasable area of 127,200. We used a rent of $6.84. Potential rent is $870,048. To that, we applied a vacancy loss of 2.5%, expenses of 2%, and we used a cap rate of 6.3% to derive the value of $13,006,000. Page 6 is our cap rate tables. 6.3 falls within the range of all the cap rates between 5.5 and 9.8. It's just below the bottom of the 20th to the 80th percentile range at 6.3%, but it is supported as well by the outside sources. On page 8, we see some overhead views of this property. You can see that there is indeed ample land, a good land-to-building ratio for this property. Page 9 are some alternate views of this property. Turning to page 10, this is an article published by MacDon in their publication called Performance. This is the spring 2017 edition. Here they note that in the fall of 2015, MacDon Industries opened its state-of-the-art parts distribution center in Winnipeg. Their comments are listed there on the bottom left. Some of the details of the property, they note with 40 feet of clear height, there's 3.95 million cubic feet of usable space for shelving, optimizing storage and accessibility for parts inventory. Space utilization and efficiency is maximized with narrow aisles using wire-guided forklift equipment. 110,700 square foot of warehouse space. There's 12 bay loading dock capacity, which speed receiving and shipping capabilities for good service. And there's a full implementation of integrated warehouse management system, which provides better inventory management, tracking, and warehouse efficiency. On page 11, the second part of that article, there are some photos of the property, and just noting that MacDon considers this to be a world-class parts distribution center. On page 12, we have a land title summary. This is pertaining to the sale in December of 2014. The consideration, the purchase from HMQ was $4, but there's a sworn value of the property at $6.5 million, as I mentioned earlier. Page 13 is the status of title for this property. On page 15 is a permit that was taken out for the construction of this property. As you can see there, the total project value is $17,951,000. On page 16, we see that number again, as put forth by Stuart Olson Dominion, that the construction value for the project was $17,951,000. On page 17, we see the board order from last cycle where the assessment was confirmed at $12,016,000. Page 19 is the financial submission of MacDon. It's an owner-occupied premise, so there's no rent information to be had. Page 24 is our addenda information, which again, you have all heard time and time again. So what we have here, in summary, this is a world-class, state-of-the-art distribution center built at a cost of close to $18 million. On land worth $6.5 million, a total value of $24 million. The income value isn't quite there, but we think the income workup is done using fair market value assumptions, and the value derived is $13,006,000. I ask that the board confirm the value at that level. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dufeld, if you have any questions, you're
Yes,
welcome
thank
to
you.
ask.
Page 4, was this all generated by the model?
That's correct.
Is this what you're relying on for value?
Yes, it is.
Now, what is the classification, distribution warehouse?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so do you have a class for world-class state-of-the-art distribution centers?
I don't understand.
Do you have a class for, you call this a world-class state-of-the-art distribution center? Is there a class in the model?
It's classified as a distribution warehouse.
You don't have an extra class for this, that, do you?
No?
Okay. Page 12, you presented a sworn value. Now, did you investigate this transaction? Do you know anything about it?
Just what's presented there on page 12.
So you weren't aware it was actually a land trade?
No?
Okay. And you said that it is on land worth $6.5 million. Now, what proof do you have then that it's worth $6.5 million?
Well, it's a sworn value at land titles.
Did
So
you
somebody
bring,
swore to the value.
did you bring land sales?
No, I'm just
Okay.
stating the facts.
Sworn value. Now, I'm going to hand this out in rebuttal, but you are governed by the IAAO. You follow their standards, correct?
Yes.
So in their standards, does it not say that for the purpose of mass appraisal and ratio studies that you shouldn't rely on sales from government?
I'm not relying on it, I'm just stating the fact.
You did rely on it. You said if land was worth $6.5 million. That is an estimate of value. You estimated its value. So I would like to know, first of all, if that is the proper standard, and second, what proof do you have of that other than the trade?
I have the trade, that's what I have.
Okay. On page 15 and 16, you have, you brought forward project value. Now, does project value mean that it's building value?
Well, it's stated as construction value, so I would say construction of the structure.
Well, it says here on page 15, project value under the permit, 17,951, which is the same number in the letter, construction value for this project.
Right.
So does that mean it's for the building? Is that you're interpreting that to mean the building? Weren't there other things built at the same time?
That would be the value of the building.
Wasn't the interior systems built at the same time?
It's the value of the building, it's the value of the construction.
Where does it say it's for the value of the building?
It's stated on page 16 in my brief.
It says on page 16 the construction value for this project.
Correct.
That doesn't say for the building. My question is, isn't there a breakdown there that some of these costs were for the construction of items used in the business part of this project?
No.
And
No,
how do
that
you
wouldn't
know
be
that?
the case because the permit fees are paid on the value of the construction, so they wouldn't include things that weren't part of the building construction.
You know this for a fact?
Yes, I do.
From where?
Well, the permit, the fees for the permit are based on the declared value.
Well, so if they built racking, that's done without permit then?
I'm relying on the document on page 16.
Okay, but you didn't do any further investigation on a breakdown between the portions that were involved in this other than what you're presenting here then?
Exactly.
Okay, now, on page 15, it says here, 17,951, but right below it, it says declared construction value 5,385,000.
Right.
Well, why is that number there?
Well, sometimes these constructions are done in phases, and that would represent the value of a certain phase of the project.
Okay, so the 5 million is this phase, and description above says construct a 2-story, 127,000 storage warehouse facility.
Right. The total project value is $17,950,000.
Well, this says construct a facility for 5 million. Could there be other permits that relate to other things that you haven't shown us?
Sure.
On page 19 to 23, this is this the mailer that was sent to your office by the owner?
Yes.
To your knowledge, has it been changed in any way?
Not to my knowledge.
And why does the area differ from your area at 125, 342?
I don't know.
Well, you know, understand the difference between as-built and planning?
Well, the gross floor area is 127,200.
Right, but they're saying
as per the permit.
they're saying that their leasable area is 125 to 342. Did you investigate what the difference was?
No, I didn't.
The rents that you're using on page 3, were these, sorry, who selected these? Did you do them?
I selected these, yes.
Okay. So I know you're familiar with 1345 Redwood, and you can agree with me here that the owner and their agent and their lawyer are stating that that's not a market rent. We have stated that. You are aware of it?
I think that's the rent shown in the lease as a net rent.
It's not my question. You are aware that we are clearly indicating it's not a market-driven transaction?
Well, we're relying on it as a net rent as per the lease.
I understand that, but my question I'll ask again. You can agree that the owner, his agent, and his lawyer have all said that that is not a market transaction? Can you accept that?
I can't say.
You were there. It's on the tape. You heard it. I'm just asking if you heard that or not.
I don't recall.
Okay. And 1950 Sergeant, the source of this income was a mailer?
Yes.
And was this a built-to-suit project?
I don't know.
The cap rate of 6.3%, that is outside the 20th percentile, I take it?
Yes.
And all of your information for your cap rates came from the process done in the modeling, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in that process, on page 26 and 27, you have a bit of a write-up. And at page 26, it does say here that you use owner-reported income and expense information. That would be from the mailers?
Can't say.
Well, where do they get the information from then?
No, I'm not involved in that process.
Well, why'd you come here then, if you don't know where this information came from?
I'm defending the value put forth on this property. That's what I'm here for.
Well, I've heard dozens of assessors say it comes from the mailer, so but you're not one of them, and you're not aware of that.
Well, is that what it says on page 26?
Stabilizing owner-reported income and expense information. So my question is, did the owners report this to you directly, or did this come from a mailer?
The net operating income has been developed through stabilizing owner-reported income and expense information.
Right. Was that from the
Well,
reporting?
however it's provided
From
to
the
us
mailer.
is what it is.
Would you have a second way of collecting information other than the
Well,
mailer?
either mailers or if they submit financial statements, then that.
And the financial statement submission would come at what point in time? With the mailer?
At the same time as they're requested, annually.
In that case, when I'm just looking at your industrial sales, do you know whether or not the information that was provided was done on effect of the date of the sale, or was it from a prior mailer return?
I didn't prepare those, so I can't comment.
In the well, let's just look at 1100 Waverly as an example. It sold in September of 2017, and a cap rate was calculated. When would the information be dated from that you used? Was that from the April 2017?
I have no idea, I didn't prepare it.
Okay, go back to my other question. To your knowledge, is there another source for information inside the assessment department?
Not to my knowledge.
Have you inspected this property?
No, I haven't. No.
At any point in time, did you follow the IAAO standard to consider the effects of assemblage?
No, we're relying on the model-generated income value.
But in calculation of value, you are required to consider the effects of assemblage, are you not?
I'm relying on the model value here.
I understand, but in your statement, you have certain things on page 1 about costs and land acquisition.
Right.
So you put this in here, so now it's open for questioning. And my question is, when you looked at this, did you consider the effects of assemblage?
What does that mean?
Well, I'll hand out a paper on the effects of assemblage, but I can take it from your response that the answer would be no, if you don't know what it means.
I don't understand your question.
Okay, well then I think that's an implied no, that you did not consider the effects of assemblage. It's a fairly common concept.
Well,
Well, we'll leave it till you...
Yeah, but is there the value is based on assembling several parcels together, or being beside one that you want to add to your portfolio, or assembling different ones, and at what stage in the process you purchase it?
right.
So
I note that they purchased this parcel to build this distribution warehouse. Those are the facts.
those are my questions.
Thank you. Let's see if the panel has any questions. Mr. Whitbread.
Just confirming, I believe you said 684 rent was a model-driven rent,
That's correct.
and no adjustments were made.
Yeah.
And similarly, vacancy would be model-driven?
Yes.
No adjustments. Okay. No, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lorndo.
Nothing at this time.
And I have a question I think Mr. Neufeld already asked, sort of, but Did you do any investigation of land sales around there to see if the 6.5 million had any semblance of order?
I did not.
No. Okay. That's all my questions. We'll hear from you, or Mr.
We're going to
Elder.
do a bit of rebuttal.
Okay, we'll hear your rebuttal now.
First, I'm going to have some handouts on, and I have an extra copy for the next property. How many of these do we need? Seven. Six, right. And I got another one for you.
Okay.
No, you have more here.
Thank you.
And one for the other side. Okay.
Don't get cheeky.
Well, could I ask one question? Well, go ahead, Ed. Is this before the mini board already? From last section, or is it?
It's been appealed to the municipal.
It's at the mini board then?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I know.
Thank you.
Okay,
Is that it?
you've got for this one, yeah.
Okay.
So, a lot of this is repeat, so I'm not going to go through it all. I just wanted to highlight some of the areas that I questioned the assessor on. And there's number one, page one. Sorry, I'm looking at this document.
Okay.
It talks about sales verification. So we didn't hear any sales verification. We heard about, I have a title with a sworn value. And the importance of sales verification when you're going to rely on it for value.
But he's not, if I can butt in here, he's not asking here for $24 million, which is the cost of the building plus the cost of the land.
But
He's using the income approach.
In his words, that the value is conservative in light of the land value and declared project value. So
Okay.
he is using it for support.
Okay.
And
But he's not asking for $24 million.
in my
so-
opinion, some part people may find this prejudicial, and I would like to remove the prejudice.
Okay, go ahead.
Page 2, sales generally considered invalid, sales involving government agencies. Now, in this case, it was a swap. Transport Canada traded the land that was abutted the airport for this land that they had in their inventory. They made up a number and put it on. Transport needed this to show the minister that they made a good deal. The owner didn't care because now the land they swapped, even up, cost them $90,000 an acre. And it was what was the sale value? It was $900,000. That's what they traded for this piece of land, apparently worth $6 million. A $900,000 parcel, even up. So, this information shouldn't even have been in here had there been sales verification. It's just been presented as prejudicial.
Well, it's been presented as what was sworn value at land titles, that's all. And it says right there that that's sworn value. So we understand the sworn value of land titles. He's not presenting it as a
If
sale.
you're bringing forward any information that there's any form of reliance on, it should be valid. And if it isn't valid, why is it there?
Well, it was put in at land titles, and that's what he's put in there, what the figure that was put in at land titles. He's not saying it's a true sale. He did not say it was a true sale. He said it was what's
Mr. Chair,
sworn
you
at
have a
land
debate on
titles.
this, or are we going to hear it?
What he said was it's land worth $6.5 million. That's what he said. I wrote it down.
Okay, carry on.
Page 3, is, again, the cap rates, and I've been through this before, but I'm going to do it again. And I'm just going to focus on the industrial. 90 Park Lane was sold for an end user. It wasn't sold as an investment sale. So there is no cap rate. You need an investor to buy it for its revenue stream to have a cap rate. You can't make it up and say, I got an owner-occupied building, I think I'll put a cap rate on it. Not the way it works. And on page 4 is their declaration and how that they were doing an internal amalgamation of 2 properties. And plus information from our brokers and Stevenson's brokers who did the deal on this transaction. 225 Watt was not sold for a cap either. And my conclusion on that, on page 4, I have 2 pictures, one before the sale, one after the sale. Before the sale, it shows Cushman & Wakefield sale, NHI Industries, and actually it's not industrial, it's a consulting and training business. Then after the sale, there's a picture on page 5, and the signage is gone. So how could this be a cap sale when the user, the occupant, is gone? Again, not a cap sale. There has to be some, even if they were in for a part of the time, they're now vacated, not a cap sale. A cap sale means that there is an ongoing tenant in there and the purchaser purchased the revenue stream. They did not purchase a revenue stream. 1100 Waverly, a couple issues with this. This is our property, we managed it, we leased it up, we sold it. I'm speaking of Collier's. First of all, it's not an industrial property. At one time, it was about 90% occupied by Manitoba Hydro, who vacated upon their completion of their downtown office building. They vacated it. So they didn't vacate industrial space. They vacated to an office building. That's a very reasonable conclusion. The users who are in there now are not industrial. I have the tenant list below from the owner's site. Crystal Bay Restaurant, Tower Engineering, Office, Video Gaming, which is, I think, a laser tag, Liquor Control Commission. That is, I think, the only thing. It was intended to be a bonded warehouse, a small one. Winnipeg Minor Hockey, Stella's Catering, and XFIT. There's pictures of all these people outside. And there's also Manitoba First Nations is in there, Fulford Community Living Services, and the City of Winnipeg. And the City of Winnipeg is a quasi-industrial usage because this is where you can swap out your recycling bins when they break and you want to buy a new one, which is what I was in there once. One of my kids broke our recycling bin. Major tragedy. Now, the other problem with this sale, with these sales, is where I say on here, there's several of these that say that they weren't allowed to use it, and at the last pages from page 8 forward are the annual returns for the cover letter for this particular property and several others in there. And what they say is, we expressly prohibit use of this data for the creation of capitalization rates or rates of return, as this data was not created for that purpose, nor was it produced for any sale or at the time of any sale. And that's key. That's why we don't like it being used for cap rates, because it's entirely misleading. We don't intend to bear liability when somebody abuses the information that they've got. You don't take information like this and make a cap rate and call it a cap rate. That's not how they're supposed to be done. It has to be done at the time of sale, not a year and a half prior, because the mailer for Waverly was sent in April, and it was for the previous year. So as of time of sale, it was at least a year old. And the history of the building, it was on a reabsorption cycle. So when that data was presented to it, it was still 70% vacant. When it filled up, investors put it on the market and it sold. So you had to be there at the time of sale in this building because it was rapidly absorbing. And on top of it, the leases were very, very interesting. It was on a quick fill-up basis where there were tremendous inducements. And most of these inducements occurred in the first couple of years of rent to get people in there. But as the leases reach their maturity, the rents increase, and that is what the purchaser paid for it. So we're talking about a very sophisticated investment that doesn't deserve to have a glib rate thrown out like it's real. The real rate was much, much higher, and it was based on an investment window, a sophisticated calculation, and not something that we should be sitting here debating on. It just shouldn't have been there. Now, this is the sort of stuff that went into the model. The model is quite invalid. The next, and I'm also going to speak to the management lack of non-recoverables in here as well. And the next document is this one with blue. And briefly, this just talks about the convergence of the real estate world, appraisal world, and IAAO on the concept of a management expense. Some call it a management expense, I call it a non-recoverable rate. The conclusion here is that buildings all have non-recoverable costs, and they range in buildings depending on the type of lease and the type of experience a building is having. All valuation has to account for a non-recoverable income. It's not something you can legislate away. It's not something the city of Winnipeg can decide doesn't exist. They don't have the authority. They're trying to change the world by their own edicts. And it would be very much like if you told an engineer, oh, by the way, your load-bearing capacity of your soil, we legislated it. Apologize. We've changed the rules. You're going to tell it. You're going to put it to what we tell you to, not what the engineering requirements are. Imagine how silly that would be. It's the same thing here. You have an entire sophisticated world of people involved in real estate who are now being told by the city of Winnipeg, no, it doesn't exist anymore. Now here's some new information. It's page 5, and we have this. This all started when I discovered at a hearing that items had been changed on income and expenses that had been submitted to the city. And so in here I've detailed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ones, the latest which was a few days ago, where information submitted by the owner had been altered and deleted and then presented to the board as evidence. I'm not a lawyer, and what I'm saying is strictly my opinion, but it's my understanding that that is an indictable offense which carries a mandatory, upon being found guilty, a mandatory request for...
Mr. Chairman, what is the relevance of this?
Are you saying today that his statements have been altered?
No, I'm getting to that.
Because we don't, if his statements aren't altered, then we really don't.
Oh, no, but all of these were used in the creation of the model. How valid can a model be when, if you don't like something, the bulk of these that were removed were non-recoverable costs? How valid can their study be if they've been found altering evidence?
Do you know that it was altered before they built the model or after the model?
We don't know yet.
Yes, so it really, unless you're thinking his is altered, maybe we don't need to go. this, which,
You know, I appreciate your comments. With all due respect, I'm trying to say that this is a very serious issue.
yes, we understand, but its relevance for today is that
If you have doubt about the validity of the model, and now here's some actual evidence that shows alteration, our goal here isn't to say, well, it hasn't been proven and throw it out. Our goal here is to say, let's go with the doubt. Because that's the way the Canadian justice system works. It isn't, maybe we'll just forget about
well,
it.
you've raised the doubt, yes. I
We've
understand
raised the
your
doubt,
point,
and under
yes.
the concept of reasonable doubt, the city should not be inflicting their opinions on anyone until we can get to the bottom of this. And I am taking personal efforts to get to the bottom of it. And there are others who are as well. So you're being told about it.
Thank you.
Now, in the presentation that the city is making, and I just want to have a reference point on this so we can show that I'm not on the addenda to this, starting on page 24, it does refer to dealing with case law. And I know you've all heard
Which document, sorry, which document are we dealing with
the assessors, page 25, 6 and forward, it's called a fresh look, and in it refers to case law. Now,
in the assessor's brief?
yes.
Have you finished presenting?
I'm just going to establish the link and why this is rebuttal. Now, the case law that is commonly referred to, and you've heard me say this in the past, they have two cases they brought forward. One is 2184 and 2188 McPhillips, and I'm showing you on page 11 and 12 that order was in error and there was issues with it. Another one they have is dates from 1997, I believe, where the appellant was non-responsive and it was more of a punitive issue, if you read the decision. Now, I've handed out a couple of decisions that came after that, 2006. I'm not going to go through them, but in it they talk about the city again, after trying to minimize the management cost. And in these cases, the board ordered the full 5%. So for here's my point, for every time you can bring forward an order supporting no management fee, we can bring 10 orders where it was brought under dispute and put on. And then we can bring forward hundreds of orders where it was agreed to by consent. So the concept of case law is utter nonsense and shouldn't be considered on the management side. That is my rebuttal information on this particular property. Oh, sorry, no. Page 3.
Page 3 of what?
Of the assessor's brief. I'll just reiterate that 1345 Redwood was a non-market transaction. 1950 Sargent.
This is your rebuttal.
Verbal rebuttal. The 1950 Sargent was a build-to-suit project which was on a pure cost recovery basis. So these aren't leases, market leases. The real truth of this, and I'll say it now or I can say it in my presentation, is when you have a large building, it's a situation of if you need a large building, you're paying a premium. If you have a large building to lease, you're look a long time to find a tenant. It's all about finding the right match. In these cases, we had people who needed a large building and paid a premium for them. And we can go back to my first rebuttal that I discussed, page 7, which is the definition of market value. There's 3 definitions here. And buyer and seller are typically motivated. And
Or,
Mr. Chairman, is this actually rebuttal or is this a presentation?
It's hard to say. Are you going to tell us?
where the
about-
parties have each acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without compulsion. That's the thing. I can find leases, high-end leases, high-cost leases of big spaces where we knew the motivation existed and there was no other space. And that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is when you have an empty building and you're trying to fill it up. Thank you. That's what I have to say in rebuttal.
I thank you. Questions on
I
this
have no
rebuttal?
questions.
Oh, no, sorry, I'm not finished rebuttal. Damn it. Yeah, one more. You need 4 of them. This is just for this
Just for
property.
this property?
I did ask this question earlier.
Do you have more? No?
Do I need one more?
Yeah.
I'll give you this one after I read it because I have another one that's out of order.
Okay.
The first page, the possibility of assemblage. Now, Canadian Uniform Standards, which is appraisal, require an appraiser to consider the effect of assemblage. There's the description of it. And the IAAO follows QSPAP. That's in page 1. And also, further on, there's the cost approach and a discussion of the cost approach, that if you're going to consider the cost approach, you have to apply, you have to consider reproduction versus replacement, which is just because something costs so much to build, what would the cost in the market be to replace it with something of equal utility and not the improvements in it. Then there's the depreciation that has to be applied, 3 types of depreciation, page 14, 13, physical, functional, external. So if someone builds something that the market doesn't need, but they need it, it's called obsolescence. Super adequacy works for them. Market's not the least bit interested in it. So when you build a building that's too high in a place that has 27-foot-high warehouses, if you spend a few million extra because you want another couple of rows of rack height because you happen to store tractor parts in there which are large, will the market consider that? So any consideration of cost has to be brought in with immediate obsolescence. And there's a couple of great municipal board orders on immediate obsolescence.
I think we'll be relying on the income approach.
Yes. Again, I'm worried about the prejudicial nature of the statements. So I am providing this, and there is something in here that we're going to be discussing on the next one, so I'll make sure you, I didn't bring an extra copy, so.
We'll keep it aside.
Thank you, sorry.
That's your
for
question.
sure, guaranteed that.
Thank you. Any questions?
I still have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Whitbread?
No, I'm going to leave it alone.
Here's
So I don't want
If
questions.
I'd love to leave it alone, but you know me, I can never leave things alone. When it comes to assemblage, they usually try to do it quietly when they're working in an area where it drives the price of the land up.
Correct.
They've been acquiring land in this area for some time.
That's correct.
I know because we dealt with one of the other properties. But if the reason you bring up assemblage is because you're saying it's driven up the price for them they had to pay a higher price or a higher value for that land, is that what I'm understanding? Because I'm just trying to understand
in
what
the
you're...
case of this particular property, they paid $900,000 for it, right? So it doesn't, that was the one part that was missing. But the concept here, the concept of assemblage has to be considered. And if they had paid $6.5 million, that would still be invalid because assemblage, they're an expanding company, they're growing, they're forced to keep to buy land, and the only land they can really use is land around them, so it drives that up.
there's going to be another parcel that they purchased coming probably at some point in the future. And there's another competitor in their marketplace, Winnipeg, who's also growing. You have two owner-occupied sites in the same area who need to expand and cannot move. So the sales have to be viewed, really reviewed. And in this case, it was developed in the beginning as a market indicator. But the concept, in my opinion, should have been brought up by the assessor and considered.
I'm good.
May
Good
I
on.
just, for clarification, I'll ask a question.
Go ahead.
So if I understand your point, just to put fine tuning on it, $6.5 million, the inflated price through assemblage to get the land they needed to build the property that they wanted.
Correct.
The 17,951 building permits comes back to your presentation on functional and external obsolescence, in that, yes, it costs us that much to build, but it's not worth that much because of the obsolescence factors that you talked about.
And the fact that some of the money went for business issues. Like, you become a state-of-the-art distribution facility, not because you have a wonderful building, it's because you have material handling inside.
The computer technology, all of that, I get that.
Mechanized picking.
So we look at a number that comes out to something in the neighborhood of $23 million, $24 million, and you don't think that's reflected in the value of 1306 that the city has placed?
Well,
What do you want it to, well, I know what you want it to be.
He hasn't even put it in yet. He hasn't put it in.
I understand that, but we've got that to work at.
well, exactly. The point is, a lot of businesses pay too much money when they need to do something because their business needs more. This is a $1 billion business, and the transaction, I think, was $4 billion on its recent sale. So you think a couple $1 million, sorry, don't mean to, I'm just speaking this way, and I don't mean it out of my perspective.
You're not trying to bump the value up, I
But
see.
do you think anybody cares about a few million when you need to expand your $1 billion business and you're going to pay a premium? I've sat with them on meetings in their land acquisition, and they go like, okay, well, we want this parcel. Well, what do you think it's worth? And I said, yeah, $1.5 million maybe. This is a different one altogether. And yeah, but the owner wants $2.5 million and he's got bids. Well, let's bid $3.5 million. Like, who cares?
You've answered the question.
Yeah.
I just needed clarification on
Okay.
those meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no questions.
And you've asked them already, Drew.
So we will begin with your presentation, I believe.
Thank you. So what we're trying to do is value the fee simple interest of the market value of the site, which is not the same as the business or the enterprise value, which I think has been overly focused on.
I tried to tell you that.
EMS is the concept of rent. Now, what we're looking at here is on page 3, we have a number of rents, and what we've been trying to use in these, when we have these rents, is to find rents that came from our own system so that we know that they're free of any inducements. One of the great debates in the past has been, people reporting net effective rents versus net rents, because say that there's an inducement to get a tenant in, or for example, the tenant wanted some TI money and they put it into the lease. We're trying to avoid that entirely, but it's simply not using those leases. That's why we tend to use these same rents all the time, because they're as clean as we can find them, and the reason they're clean is because we did the deals, we have the leases, we did the research. And except for the ones marked COW, those came from the city, that the city had provided. On page 4 are a number of these rents, and we're in this side, we're not necessarily relying on this to determine a value, but this is an illustration of how a ratio study should be done. What we're looking at is a rate per square foot versus the size of the facility, and just graphing it and letting Excel tell us what the intersect is. In this case, they came up with $3.83. and that's from the data below. Now, I easily admit to you that some of these are inferior to the subject in terms of their amenities. We ended up at $5. We went to the top of the scale for large rents, which is on page 3, because these are the proven rents. Anything outside the range, like the assessor brought in, are rents where there was they don't fit market value when there's undue pressure on the tenant to secure a space. For example, the Bowen space. There was nothing that big available in the market except Redwood. It was in this case it was a seller's market. It was the only one available. It should have rented for $3, but it didn't because we had an overly motivated tenant. We don't adjust sales like that. We don't use them. We don't use build-to-suit sales because that's just a repayment of an investment, and we don't know what was invested. Now, well, I happen to know for 1950 Sargent that they rebuilt the entire dock facility for them. I dealt with the owner on it. And it was a FedEx or Purelator, I've forgotten their distribution system. So you can't go outside a range because you can't prove that it exists, and that's logic and reason. You can't. That's like saying hypothetically we could have a unicorn, but I've never seen one. So how can you say that they exist? How can you say the rent exists when it hasn't been proven? The $5 rent also would indicate some concern for the super adequacy of the site. The high ceiling, as I said earlier, was the owner's requirement. They make tractors and farming equipment. Their specialty lines are particularly swathers. Now, I don't know if anyone has got a farm background here or has even seen a swather. There you go. So you know how wide a swather blade is. That's what's stored in there. So you need a high ceiling to fit them. Just to put them in, turn them around, and maneuver them. There aren't a lot of swather manufacturers in the city of Winnipeg who are willing to come and buy this building because it's got a high space. Now, there are a couple of other high-Q places in the city. One is Kuhn and Nagel's place on Fife, which they sent to sublet market. That had a high ceiling as well. And I'm not sure if I've reported that one. Yeah, 1155, 108,000 at 375. That's a 28-foot ceiling. And my ceilings, by the way, are interior clear, so that external would be about 31 feet. The assessment number is an outside measurement at 40, so that indicates about a 37 clear, because you have to take off the trusses. The business doesn't care about the outside height, they care about interior clear when we go to market, and that's the way we report all of ours. So that rent is $5. As to vacancy, we've applied a vacancy number from the Johnson report that's got the coffee spilled all over it.
That's water.
Okay, good. And we find that the city's vacancy numbers don't seem to reflect actual market. Now, the Johnson report has been around, and before that, the Croach report, for decades. And what it is Mr. Johnson tracks every single building in the city of Winnipeg and compiles his information. And in the vacancy report, it provides the building, the size, as much detail, ceiling height, asking rates, rail, industry uses it, and then works out the vacancy. So, and this is done the old-fashioned way. This is done by going out and getting the information directly from the source. It's not done by forcing people to sign a mailer and send a mailer in. It's more accurate. So he pegs the investment inventory vacancy by 7.2%. Now, in Murray Park, there was no reported vacancy in this period. However, that's because the size of the market of Murray Park is 374,000 square feet only of space, of investment space, not owner space. So MacDon doesn't make this because they're not considered investment. Now that's out of a total inventory of 27 million square feet of investment inventory. So that number is not fair as a market risk. So we're using the city number, overall city rates. And the great part about this is if you do find a district that has an anomaly, whether it be negative or whether it be positive, you can actually go to the page and figure out why is this happening and look at it. And that's why I was able to determine that Murray Park wasn't reliable. But I also know that there's another district in here, Transcona is not reliable because there were just one or two problem buildings and it popped up at double digits vacancy. For non-recoverables, we used 5%, which is an industry standard, has gone through the rebuttal already. It's owner occupied, so they have no reported non-recoverable. However, at the back of my study, my brief, there is our study from Colliers, where we looked at our managed properties, and these are a mix of retail, office, and industrial, and looked at the management, the non-recoverable costs, which averaged 12.8%. Now, in that 12.8%, there were some problem buildings, as you can see. Oh, incidentally, there are typos on here. There is no December 19. It was from the previous year. That was the year that it was just a, no, sorry, that was a pure and simple typo. It was a previous year. And so on page 49 is our curve, and it shows the properties. So there are properties that went as high as 30% non-recoverables, and when you investigate them, you look and you see, well, that's because they had a high vacancy. And those properties, we don't take them out. What we do is we weigh them and we consider, yes, you're going to be 30% this year, but when you fix your problem, it's going to go back down. And there are a couple of properties that are side by side that actually show that relationship of having a good year versus a bad year. And they were number, at the, yeah, okay, sorry, I was just looking for an example, but I know there's one in here. I'm going to carry on. So you can have good years, bad years, but for us, the concept, for us, I mean, appraisers, brokers, property managers, the real estate world, we use stabilized numbers. So you have to have the assumption that things are running normally. You don't have a problem building. So as the curve flattens out, it's about 7%, which is exactly what we've had in the past. 5% management, 2% structural. That's what it's been for years, and we've agreed for years, and that's the real world. So that's what we've applied. But the difference is that we've also considered is that we no longer is going to do a 2% for structural. We're going to do it on the basis of the building, and there's two ways of doing it. One is by square foot, one is by percentage of income. And percentage of income is reserved for very large investment properties, say Polo Park or something like that, whereas the rest of the world cares about the amount of square feet, because most of the money for structural reserve is for roof replacement or repair, which is generally always, virtually always, not covered in the lease. It's always the landlord's responsibility. Everybody makes them put in a structural reserve, not just appraisers and brokers and property managers, but their accountants. The shortfall we're using is our actual calculated shortfall, and the breakdown is shown below. And tax, we're using the actual at $227 a foot. Utilities is, we're using the assessment department's business assessment model for this, and in this case, not including the air conditioning, but because it's a reliable indicator for a normalized amount. Some buildings will have low utilities because of their use, some will have high because of their use, and it's normalized. And arguably, this could be lower, but again, we're going for stabilization. And repair and maintenance is our estimate. Usually we use about $2 a square foot. It is a larger building, and so there are some economies of scale, and that comes out to $627 for a shortfall. Finally, in regard to the capitalization rate, this would be considered in the Collier's report were it to be on the market. And the Collier's report, the actual advertising blurb is on page 26. And what we have in it are a range between 6.5 and 7.25. Now this is a unadjusted range. This is we include closing costs, so we artificially drive that cap rate lower. The descriptions for it, you can see it does fit in it on the page 28, except for the fact that it's owner occupied. The rate calculation is explained on page 29. The summary is shown on page 30, in that the ranges would be between 7 and 8.25 for a property of this sort. Now, so we start off that we're going to be in the range of 7 to 8.25, all things considered the same. Now that number here has been penciled in at 8%. And I can tell you right now that that probably should have been the midpoint at about 7.625. Because I rarely bring in great investment properties. Most of my properties are not, which is why they're always under appeal. Now, then we look at the individual issues with it, and the major issues are the fact that it was built to suit and has a super adequacy, being the high roof, which no one's willing to pay for extra on the market, and the size of it. Now, the size is, as I was talking about earlier, selling a big building is always a question of working harder to find a match between the user and vendor. The optimal size in Winnipeg is about 30,000 square feet. That is what our market dictates as a typical thing. Just like you can say that our typical bungalow is 1,400 to 1,500 feet, and our typical two-story is 1,800 to 2,000 feet in the residential world. It's just our market. Different parts of different cities have larger buildings. You fly into Toronto Airport and you can see that there's nothing under 300,000 square feet. But that's not Winnipeg. 30,000 is the norm. When you go higher than that, you have fewer users. There are not a lot of Boeings out there. And that is going to put pressure on it to keep the income growing, because if we're on the market, and we're vacant, what would happen is you'd be pressed with two choices. One, wait a long time. Well, three choices. Wait a long time. 3, take a lower rate, or not subdivide it into smaller pieces, 20 to 30,000 square foot base, and spend a lot of money on it. And that's where the problem comes in, because it's built to suit. That is a much more difficult process with this building, so it's really off the table. And that's why we've capped, but regardless of that, I'm not changing my mind on the cap rate. It would be about an 8.5% because of those issues. There are some cap rate examples on pages 37 and forward. The top one is a body shop, which is an 8% rate, 19,000 square feet. That was a build-to-suit recovery, so its application is okay in terms, because the lease actually specified a rate of return. This wasn't something calculated. The parties got together and said, I want to build this, you're going to pay for it, I don't care what you spend, I want an 8% return. That's why it's there. Honest, 8% return in a better part of town build-to-suit project. Then there's the slate portfolio. I'm sure we'll probably get into it later, we've got a lot of time. That capped out at 8.6%. And then there are a number of other properties in here. There is a large building, 100 Paquin, that capped at 8.47%. That was 121,000 feet. That one had a bit of a history on it in that it started with Temro being the owner who did sold it to an investor on a leaseback, which capped at about 8.5%. And then that investor sold it to another investor, and then Temro went bankrupt. But the purchaser had an alternate use for it, but at time of sale it was 8.47%. So that one indicates the problem with the big building and the filling in. In his case, he had one standby user that ended up using half the space, so he was fortunate. Pages 6, 7 forward are pictures of the site, and so you can see the design of the site and the construction of it. The layout, Christmas tree lunchroom, page 11 is a sketch, and that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any questions. Mr. Penner?
Yeah. So, given the declared construction value of this warehouse, and given the sworn land value of $6.5 million, the total value of $24 million, would Max Vaughn really be a willing seller of this property at $5,559,000?
They're not in a position to sell them, and they didn't spend that much for it. I already told you they spent $900,000 to get the land. And the other part of the
So my question is, would they be a willing seller at $5,559,000? Because we need a willing buyer and a willing
I
seller.
don't think he's really able to say what Mac does.
Well, I'm sorry, you're twisting the concept of market value.
So we could move on
The
from...
current user is not a willing seller, ever.
Okay.
But should their needs change,
We're
and they
here-
were in a position to sell, would they be a willing seller? at that
We're
price?
here to provide a value on the basis that they were a willing seller and there were willing buyers.
Right.
That is not the actual situation, and it's, to consider it is not correct.
Yes, we understand the build is not for sale, and you don't know what they're going to do, so we'll...
Right, no, I understand that. But the very definition of fair market value is what a willing seller would sell for to a willing buyer with all factors known.
And we all know the definition of market value, so...
And that was my question. And that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Whitbread, questions?
No questions.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Square footage.
Yeah.
I notice you're using the same as the city, yet it's not the, they reported 127,000?
125, something, yeah.
125. Their plant was 109. I guess it'd be 109 plus the washrooms and the lunchrooms upstairs. Would that be it?
Well, I inspected this site with Steve Alden a while back, and we agreed that we were going to use 127 too. And I start with that agreement because it was that area. Hard to remeasure an owner-occupied building. Like you can see, I think they put it on AutoCAD, and that's the number they have now. We have to, I guess, think of the industry standards. Is it the same as theirs? We wouldn't know until we did a BOMA on it.
And it would still be within a couple hundred square feet.
Yeah, they haven't done a BOMA measurement on
This
it.
is showing you off quite a bit.
120, well, I think the difference is 1,400 feet, isn't it?
Well, depending what he's using for his measurement. Is he using that hydro complex outside as well, which wouldn't necessarily fall into it.
Well,
Did they enclose the section and heat the loading docks?
no, that hasn't changed. No, but our difference, 125,342 to 127,2, sorry, is about 1,800 I used to be able to do this real quick.
A little over 1%, maybe?
So, yeah.
Still 1%.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of change.
But I know nothing about the remeasurement. I just asked the question because I was looking to see if...
But you said you visited the site.
Yes.
So the loading docks, the loading docks are inside, but are they heated?
Oh,
Because is that being taken into the square footage?
yes, the loading docks are in the square footage. The inside part, like say you're looking at page 6, the picture. Yeah, that's the outside limit of the building. I'm just trying to see. Is there a canopy on the outside? Oh, page 11 will answer. Oh, I see what you're talking about. No, that's a ramp, isn't it?
Well, the truck's backed up to a level load. They've backed up to the load.
Yeah,
They've
yeah.
actually got a loading dock.
Right. Well, that's all outside. Picture page 2, the aerial. Those are trucks, I believe, backed up to the building, which is doesn't have a canopy or cover. Yeah, assessor's page 9.
Yeah, so the loading docks are on the inside.
Yes.
You know what the loading docks are, right?
Well, that's where yeah.
They bring the material in and they distribute it throughout the warehouse from that point.
Right. The docks, yeah, see the levelers there, and they ramp down so they can unload at dock height. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right, there is one ramp door at the back on the one corner.
Yeah, it's a grade. It looks like 2 grade doors.
2 grade doors with ramps going through.
Oh, right, yeah. One of the issues we were dealing with when we went out and visited is the second floor area has dead space above it, and at one point, I think there was one of the assessments came out that included that as space, and we did clarify all that. So that's, I think, why there was an agreement at 127.2, and I don't know why they would have changed their number.
Maybe they did a boom and didn't tell you.
They could. They took out a mechanical room.
The mechanical room's on the outside of the building.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see it.
It's on one side.
Well, I could look through the file and find a reason, but that's...
If you haven't got an answer, you're using the same square footage, so you're not challenging the
No,
square.
no,
That was my hit on that. They didn't give you a breakdown of what it cost to put in that infrastructure on the inside?
I can answer that question. However, I think it's all prejudicial. No, I'm waiting for it. I have some slow responses from Stuart Olson on the breakdown. We've got a municipal board coming up on this.
Just going to say what the unit board was.
On the first year for a few months, and the debate has more to do with an occupancy permit versus an interim permit, and so what we're going to provide is the amount of work done on a monthly basis and when each part was signed off by the engineers for degree of completion. So I'm going to get the scope of work in there as well.
Well, we're the Little League anyway, we never get all the information.
Well, did you
I'm
ask?
done with my questions.
Okay, thank you, and all my questions have been asked and everything's been explained. Final words, Mr. Penna?
Just that this, in MacDon's own words, is a world-class parts distribution center. We've noted the sworn value of the land and the construction value of the building. We are using an income approach, which we think is fair and based on the market, and we would ask that the panel confirm the value. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, any final words?
I'm sure Marathon will be quite pleased that the publicity they're getting on their brochure, that the assessor's relying on it for valuation. Wonderful. But I ask that the board not rely on it and just think about market value and the problems marketing a large building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I request a short recess?
Yes, yes. Short recess.
That's usual what I'm going for.
That's going to be slow.
Yeah. Well, let me see. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order, and we will begin with item 8 on the docket, 219 Sargent Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So file number is 19-4693. The roll number is 0704213500, 2019 Sargent Avenue. Value in the roll for 2020 is $9,552,000. These buildings were built in 1981. The wall heights range from 22 to 26 square feet. The land area is 334,145. Plan area 91,385. The land plan area is 3.66. Description of the property is at the bottom of page 1. These are two multi-tenanted industrial buildings located within Centre Court, Canada. 2019 Sargent measures 42,373, consisting of 14 units, and 2021 Sargent consists of 60,097 square feet, consisting of 9 units. The combined area is 102,470 square feet, about 7.68 acres. The property features excellent access to the airport and major traffic arterials. 13 dock and 11 grade level loading doors at 2019 Sargent, 28 dock and 9 grade level loading doors at 2021 Sargent Avenue. Turning to page 2, we see that this property sold in December of 2015 for $1 million. It should be noted that that is the leasehold interest in the property that transacted, not fee simple interest. But we'll see some details on that momentarily. Subject property leases in place are shown there on page 2. Aside from Canada Customs at 1 penny, they mostly fall between $8.50 and $10. One other exception being Calm Air at 501. Turning to page 3, we have some rent comparisons, which range from $8 to $10 a square foot. On page 4, we see the premises on this property, and we have an overall rent of $8.62 a square foot. So turning to page 5, our income valuation, we have a leasable area of 101,004 square feet. To that, we applied a vacancy loss of 15%. Effective gross is $740,289. We use 2% expensive. A shortfall of $375 to have a model-driven NOI of $668,668. Should be noted that the actual NOI, as per the mailer on page 10, is $661,054. So we're within 1% of that. So the model has done a good job predicting the NOI on this property. To that, we applied a cap rate of 7% to derive the value of $9,552,000. Page 7 is our cap rate tables. We see that this falls within the 20th to the 80th percentile at 7% and supported by the outside sources. On page 9, we have a view of this property, which includes the two buildings there and the parking lot adjacent to it, outlined in purple on the bottom of page 9. So on page 10, we have the mailer submitted to us for 2017. We note that the net income shown there is $545,757. However, the vacancy space expense should have been put under vacancy, under rental income loss after the net income. The rent income at $765,856 is already net of that vacancy. So adding that back to the $545,757, the net income is $661,054. As I noted, our model NOI is $668,868, so we're very, very close on that. Turning to page 11 are the leases in place as submitted to us. On page 13, this is a submission by the vendor in this case. As we've talked about earlier, Slate Office REIT and Slate Management are two different companies. In this case, this property was owned by Slate Management and not Slate Office REIT, and they're the ones that give notice that they have sold the property here. I've included the mailer from 2014 here, just to show that in this case, the vacancy loss is shown after the net income. That's how it should properly be presented. And the net operating income in 2014 was $521,000. So the performance of this property has improved dramatically. Also noted in 2014, vacancy was 24%, and we see that the vacancy is now down to 15%. So improvements all around on this property. On page 16, we have a title which shows the purchaser of the leasehold estate. We see that they purchased it from Slate Management Corporation, and the consideration was $1 million. So again, this was not part of the Slate Office REIT portfolio sale. This was separate from it. We've already gone over that Slate Office REIT cap rate calculation, and this property should be excluded from that. As you can see, again, Slate Management was the vendor here, not Slate Office REIT. On page 19, we show that we are interested in the fee simple calculation and not the lease fee interest. This is a legal requirement in all jurisdictions across Canada, and that's what we're doing here today. On page 20, we see that this was appealed in 2018, and the value was reduced to $6,791,000. The calculation of that value is shown on page 21. As I noted, vacancy was higher then, and the property has improved significantly since then. We won't go through the agenda at the back of the brief, as we've already been through that material. So, to summarize, our model has effectively predicted the NOI. It's within $7,000 of the actual reported. We believe a cap rate for a property with airside access of 7% is very good and supported in the cap rate tables, and that the value derived at $9,552,000 is fair and accurate, and ask that the board confirm the value. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Neufeld, some questions?
Yeah, just start me off and tell me how you come up with $661,000. I didn't follow that.
The vacancy allowance is reported there.
Which line are you talking about?
Vacant space expense.
$115,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, that shouldn't be there. It should be under rental income loss.
Okay.
The rent income is already net of that, so putting it there is effectively taking it off.
Okay, but so if you say you're moving over 115,000 of an expense,
I'm saying I'm adding it back to the NOI to come up.
you're
with
adding
the-
it to the NOI.
Yes. Because the rent income is already net of that.
And this is your decision?
I see it agrees with your calculation of the NOI.
Sorry, I'm just wondering where this came from. This is your decision?
It's my decision to outline the actual NOI, the net operating income of the property.
No, but this change in the statement.
Well, I haven't changed the statement. I'm telling you the adjustment that we have to make to determine the NOI.
Right, well, I'll rephrase the question. So
Sure.
it's your decision to make an adjustment to a statement.
Yes.
And you're doing that on the basis is that you believe that the rent income of $765 had already been shown as what the actual collections
That's the
were?
actual rent. So that's already net of vacancy.
Okay, and did you investigate the nature of this vacant space expense, what it is? Could it not be a shortfall?
No.
Why?
Well, I'm in agreement with your NOI on your brief, so I don't know what we're discussing here.
I don't believe you are.
The bottom of page 1, revenue, 1,289,777, expenses, 628,723, NOI, 661,054.
Oh, okay, as full.
Yeah.
That's without the vacancy, and then we added the vacancy and the shortfall back in.
Well, the 765 is already net of vacancy. If you go through the calculation of the rents in place,
Well, see, I'm not sure if you understand their style of statement, you see. I'm just looking at the way the actual statement that this comes from, they have a different style of statement than, and I'm just wondering if you embrace that.
well, as I said, I'm in agreement with your NOI calculation.
Well, you're not in agreement with it.
Well, it
It's
says
not- my
clearly
NOI
there, 661,054.
My NOI on this page is 450,000.
Revenue less expenses at the bottom, NOI.
Yeah, well, that's mislabeled. The NOI in the workup is 450,000 because that's potential rent as full.
Well, I agree with the bottom calculation, I believe that's.
Well, which bottom calculation? I gotta pull it down here.
Right here.
Down here.
Yes.
Okay, so you figure that the accountants who prepared this don't know how much money they're making. They're not making, as they say here, you figure they're making 611,000, 661,000.
661,054. Well, they just put it on the wrong line. That's all.
Did just misplace $100,000?
We put it on the wrong line.
Okay, well, you got it wrong, but that's fine. I just wanted to know what you were doing there. What about the area? They have listed 99,980 square feet on their submission on page 10 as leasable.
Right.
And you've got, what, 101,004?
Correct. 100,000.
101?
101,004.
Right.
Yes.
So you're using that number?
That's
Not
what
with...
we're using. Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned Canada Customs paying $1. Did you look into?
A cent.
A cent. I'm sorry. Did you look into the details behind this?
No.
Well, the occupants in this are primarily customs brokers, correct?
There's a variety of occupants.
They're,
I'm guessing Canada Customs has to use the states at no rent.
as part of the services required to clear packages through customs, you need a customs agent on site.
Right.
Have you ever looked at valuations of, for example, a slaughterhouse with federal inspection where there's space?
What's the relevance, Mr. Newfeld?
Where the space is occupied by a federal inspector for the purpose of certifying the animal, the
No, I haven't looked at
So
slaughterhouses.
you're aware that they don't charge for that because it's a required service?
I'm not aware of what goes on in slaughterhouses.
Well, the nature of the building is a customs clearing building, and so Canada Customs has to be on the site, and they have someone is subsidizing that, which would be the brokers. You're not aware of that?
No.
Okay. What is the highest and best use of this site?
As is,
Which is what?
warehouse.
Warehouse. Now, given the criteria involved with highest and best use, such as the legal legal permissibility, being on land owned by the Crown and part of Winnipeg Aerodrome Complex, would that not change the highest and best use slightly to modify to an aviation-based industrial use?
I don't know. I didn't speculate.
Okay, so you've just got as a warehouse, okay. Now, so the valuation, pages 4, the rents, page 5 and 6, the extensions, are these all from the model?
Yes, these are all model rents.
Right, but the vacancy, that's an override, isn't it?
Yeah. Overruled the vacancy to actual.
Okay. And any other overrides there?
No.
Getting back to the owner statements, pages 10 to 15. So these are the owner's returns from their questionnaires that they were sent to them?
Yes.
And are these identical to the ones they've submitted, or to your knowledge, have there been any alterations?
This is what they submitted.
I just want to make sure we're clear on that, because there's some handwriting, and I will concur that it is in our copy as well. I'd just like to clarify these points. Now, on the title, this is the fee simple. Sorry, this is the leasehold estate title.
Yes.
And are you aware of the term of this rent, of this leasehold arrangement?
Yes.
And when does it expire? Do you know?
40 years and 8 months from the first day of June, 1981.
40 years from 1981. So that's next year.
Roughly 2020.
It's expiring soon.
No, 20 years.
No, it's expiring
2020, yes,
soon.
right, I'm sorry.
40 years. Yeah,
2020, yes.
2021.
Pretty soon.
Sorry, what page was that on? That was on page
16.
You aware of any extensions or on this lease term?
No, I'm not.
Is it your assumption or the department's assumption that regardless of the termination of this lease arrangement, that the site will continue in its capacity?
I don't.
Well, I guess my question is that you've said that the highest and best use is warehouse. We have a land lease expiring in the short term. And so my question is, is it the intent of the owner that this sort of use continue? Are they just getting rid of their tenant, or are they getting rid of the use? Do you know?
I don't know.
Wouldn't that be important to note in the consideration of the fee simple and the highest and best use? One of the characteristics, does it have the physical capability to do what you want to do?
I'd have to guess at that, and I'm not prepared to guess.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. See if the panel has any questions. Mr. Lorendo?
No.
Mr. Whitbread?
Nothing, thanks.
And what is the square foot rate that you're using on page 5 to come up with the value?
862
862.
per square foot overall.
That's all my questions. Mr. Newfeld?
Thank you. I have some rebuttal information. You want it all at once, or talk to me sometime?
Up to you, whatever.
Well, here's one.
Thank you.
And then these two.
Okay.
So just to show you the ground I'm on as far as this being rebuttal is the assessor was answering questions about highest and best use, and then on his page 18, 19, there was some discussion on fee simple versus a leasehold estate, or even leased fee estates. I think we should be calling it a leased fee. The site and the sale. So the sale for $1 million was because the vendor and the purchaser were both aware that the lease would be terminated in 2025. There was a 5-year renewal, and that was it won't be renewed after that. And it is not because the government doesn't want them, doesn't like the user. It's now an obsolete usage, and I handed out the reason why. There's a law passed. Well, this memorandum is dated 2016, but it's from a change in the law in 2012, the low-value shipment. What it based on, I haven't had this all, but what it basically means is that customs clearing is mostly a thing of the past. The shippers are clearing them themselves now. You don't have to go through a broker anymore. Anybody who's driven through Emerson, take a look at the side of the road where the customs brokers used to be. It's empty now because you don't have to clear it anymore. You can self-clear and self-declare, and the only time, and you can have someone do it at source. You can bond your thing up and then ship it. It's the change in simplification of order. So the whole site is obsolete, and it's designed with airside access on one side, ground side access on the other. So you can bring in your shipments in a secure area, go to the bonded warehouse, get them cleared, and then they come through the bonded warehouse to the air side, to the public side, and they can receive their packages. That was the concept behind it. So whatever's going to go there, it won't be the same as what was here. There may be a few brokers left out there with a little bit of unique business that still require it, but it's been targeted for repurposing. In other words, the highest and best use is not the warehouse any longer because the law changed, and the airport authority feels that there are better highest and best uses to pursue. Now, on that basis, you got to go back to the definition of a highest and best use. Is that you know, it has to be profitable, it has to be physically possible and legally permissible, financially feasible. This is not. So we've done evaluation on the basis of the paid rent, but that the subtenant receives. And I agree with the assessor in that respect. That is evaluation of the subtenant's income. So to chase it back to the fee simple means what is the value of the land? And right now the value of the land, there's a rent on it, and it's going to end a term, and it's going to be repurposed. The building has no value. They've told you it's not going to have any value. They're going to bulldoze it. So there are a couple of ways of looking at it, and that's, like I said, the rebuttal is what is the fee simple? And what I've done here is a calculation, and I've tried to explain this to a lot of people, and I'd like to take my work and get a reaction from an audience. And I don't mean this in any form of disrespect, but I'm having an awful hard time explaining this to people. So okay. We'll start off with this spreadsheet here, and this is based on the, if we, for example, look at the assessor's page 10, he does have this read completely wrong. And the actual NOI is actually not 545. You have to subtract the land lease. So it is 373,083. And that's on the top of this page, 373,083. Now, the argument could be, should you add the concept of a leasehold estate and a lease fee estate, they don't get added together to equal the fee simple. They can be greater than the fee simple, they can be less than the fee simple. We haven't done that analysis. We're disregarding it. We just want to show you the difference between them. Now, on the basis of just looking at the rent that they're earning, why I'm saying that is I'm just cautioning you, don't add them up. One can be greater than or lesser than the other. If you took 373,083 and capped that at 8.6%, the value is $4,338,000. Now, on a typical capitalization analysis, which is the 3 rows here, this is how a cap rate is actually done. A cap rate is run into perpetuity with a reversion at the end where the asset is sold, and that's the concept behind a cap rate. Typically, 35 plus years is used in your valuation, and extending it to 40 years doesn't really change the value. You can pretty much see that the income drops off dramatically when it goes over, as it goes up. Even 30, 31 years is an adequate length of time to do this sort of analysis. But this is how a cap rate's developed. If you take your 373,000 and you add 1% per year, because remember we're also increasing expenses at the same time. We're just assuming we've got a 1% bump in revenue, which is probably a 3% bump in revenue, but a 2% increase in expenses, including the land rent, by the way. This comes out, and you discount it every year, and I worked it out to match 4,338, and so I now have a discount factor of 10.49%. So this is a DCF style. So we know what the discount factor is in order for me, this is how this cap would have been derived if someone had actually done the math with a discount factor of 10% on the payments over a 40-year term and a reversion at the end. So that's the number one number. Now, the next row shows the same income on an 8-year schedule instead of a 40-year schedule, and what would that particular rate of return require to meet the same number. And so we take it there, and the income over the same term is, using the same discount factor, works out to $2.2 million. If you only have 8 years of payments instead of 40 years of payments, which indicates a cap of 16.7%. Because now this is the interest that our tenant is earning on his subtenants. That's the value. And to him it's worth, at this point in time, $2 million. So his sale for $1 million was not bad. He's going to make some money on this. It was a good investment. And it was a real investment. Now, moving to the fee simple, it would then be determined by the land value, because it's the owner only gets this, and he's going to demolish it at the end. These payments mean absolutely nothing to him. That's why I'm saying you can't add them up and subtract them. You're going to the fee simple, then you're going to the land value for a building that's going to be demolished. And if you sold the fee simple today, the only thing you're getting is your land rent and then a redevelopment opportunity. It's impacted by other registrations that you can't earn it. Now, the argument could be, well, you can add in the leasehold. Not necessarily. They don't add. But this is the breakdown. So now there's a couple of numbers I'm using at the bottom on the land rent. Now the rack rate at the airport now is $28,000 an acre. Rack rate meaning that's what they charge. You want to go there tomorrow, you want to put up your hotel, $28,000 an acre. That's the number. And I have a big map that shows every single site on there, and they're fairly consistent, because the sites used to be set by Treasury Board, then by Transport, and Winnipeg Airport Authority adopted them. However, those aren't the rents that you necessarily see. Now, the last time one was renegotiated was 1835 Sargent, and that was the result of an arbitration. The resulting value was $16,200 an acre at arbitration, because the formula in the lease states how it's supposed to be done. And by following the lease, the value was arbitrated to $16,000 an acre. So the actual land rent, when they put this back on the market, if they put it on today, would be $16,200 an acre. Then there's the actual lease, which is at $22,484 an acre. So we do have those numbers to consider. So that takes me back to the top, where we have the leasehold calculated at $4,338, and then the fee simple is $124,000, which is a value of $2 million. And now I'm using 6%, and this is why you can't add the two together. 6% is as vacant, not as developed with an encumbrance and getting rid of. I handed this sheet out. This is an actual rates of return. Until 2013, actually it was before that time, all government rates of return were based on the Canada bond rate. But as interest rates dropped, that bond rate dropped so low that they were giving away their land for free if they renewed. So Treasury Board initiated a policy, which you have here, of 6% rates of return, except in particular cases such as Vancouver, where the competition was so fierce that they made an exception, and there were also capital improvements required. This is for the port, for the deep water port. And I was working out there on ports and airports and all sorts of things a few years back, so this was gathered in the first-hand basis. So Treasury Board has now set up a 6% rate of return on leases. This is how they determine it, so I was using that. So again, you can't add these two together and come out to a number. But if you were to add, the numbers you would add would be 2.2 million, which is the value of the remaining payments, present value, plus the fee simple of 124,000. That's 2,073,000 plus 2,226 is approximately $4,300,000. That's a pure addition. But the point is, you know, it's kind of a simplistic way of doing it. I believe that was, yes, that was my rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any questions on the rebuttal. Mr. Cannon?
I have no questions.
Mr. Whitbread?
No questions?
Mr. Laurendeau?
Good.
I have no questions as well.
That's scary. That means I didn't explain it right.
Well, you did such a good job of explaining it, we have no questions. So we are ready for your presentation.
And I have a slight modification on that. I didn't prepare this, and I was actually out of town. And what I have is a revised amount, and this is just on the tenant's value, not the fee simple. So just a revision. And it's the same number I've shown in the rebuttal. And what the differences are that the tenant's earnings have to be less the land lease and capped at a rate that indicates the 8 years left of earning on them. I'll bring this around, and I will, promise you. So I probably made most of my presentation. Now on, we have the pictures. I have been through this property once for an inspection and a couple of times to pick up there, and so it is, as you can see, bottom of page 2, that's the secure side, and you move to the left to get into the non-secure side, which is a ground access, you would call. On page 4 is the land lease, and you can see that there was an extension going to January 2025, and the rent will be determined. And it ends, and it ends. So I think the math was that it originally was supposed to expire February 1st of 22. It was 40 years, 8 months, and then it was extended for a 3-year period. And that was known at the time of sale. So we use the actual income, and I don't think that there's much point in looking at the market for anything more than anything other than because we have a use that's so unique. I would think that in our province, there's probably only one other place I can think of where you may even see a rent structure, and that would be at the Emerson Crossing, which is Canada's 5th busiest commercial crossing, therefore requiring customs brokers. However, Colliers manages that building, and I can tell you today that the rent on our 8,000 square foot building is 0. It's empty. There's no more tenants in there. I've been working on some other rents on border crossings, and each one, of course, varies by commercial versus recreational users who are crossing there, and whether they're brokers or it's duty frees. Duty frees will pay more maybe $25, $40 a foot, but that's a different animal. We're not doing duty frees. So there is nothing like this in our market. Now, there's an operator called IAT who have several facilities across Canada, and that would be a source for other rental information. But again, that's going to be based on volume of commercial into your airport, not by the real estate. And it'd be influenced, and it's also mitigated by Transport Canada, who, in their infinite wisdom, set ground rental rates at the same amount for every airport across Canada generally. So whether you're in Red Lake or Vancouver, you probably pay the same rent for land on an aerodrome. When it's crown land to begin with, and there's no airport authority, I should say. And they also have vesting rules, which in this case, there are no vesting here. So it's just actual income, and as you can see, that I don't think I have anything new to show you here. I think I covered it in my, yes I did. So bring it around, the two numbers I asked you to look at today are the two interests. Now, I didn't submit this, but the description of leasehold estates and is, as I said, sometimes the fee simple is the sum of both, sometimes it's less than it, sometimes it's more than that. And it really all depends on what the owner does on top of it. And so a simple way of doing it is adding it together. And I can't offer you anything else other than that. Adding them together, the fee simple and the leased fee is a number of $4,299,942, rounded of course to $4,300,000. And that is adding the earnings on the leasehold, which is $2,226,000, which is 7 years of payments to go as of the reference period, and discounting them, adding that to the fee simple of the land, not the leased fee of the land. The leased fee would be the rent of $172,000. It's not fee simple though, and the fee simple is also not the rack rate because that's an asking rate. The fee simple is determined by transactions, and the last real transaction was 1835, which was the perfect match because it has a mix of airside and groundside, and it was done through arbitration, and that was $16,200 per acre, a value of $2,073,000. That's all I got. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Pena?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where does your net rent come from?
Statement.
Well, I've looked at the rent roster here. I've looked at the rent at 765, 856 listed there on the mailer, and I worked that out to $7.58 net. So I'm just curious where 661 comes from. Or is it 546? I'm not even sure.
Okay, that workup was not mine, and this was an attempt, a misunderstood attempt. I'm going right back to the statement, right here.
Yep.
And the NOI list was 545, and then you subtract the land lease, because I'm only dealing with the leasehold interest on this. So that comes to 373.
But the starting point is the gross potential, and we use a net rent. So where does 661 or 546?
I'm not relying on this calculation of 661. I'm relying on 545, line 218, subtracting the land lease.
So what are we relying on, this or your original?
On the replacement, because what I'm doing is I'm breaking out the two interests.
So I see two net rents there, 661, 546. What are we using?
Well, on the original, the original had an NOI of 450, which is what a calculation made. 450. It's in error because there was, it should be 545. Because the statement already provides for the vacancy expense. As I said, you misunderstood the reading of the statement. There's shortfall and there's vacancy loss, and they're earning $545,000. So the error on this one, I should have had an NOI on this one of $545,000, but the cap was not suitable for this because we have two specific interests in the property that we have to consider, and they do differ. One is a short-term interest on an investment, and the other is the long-term interest in the land. So this can't be capped in that manner. This is one of the few times where you can use a dual revenue stream on a building because we have dual interests. For 8 years they coincide, and after that they change.
So, Mr. Neufeld, I'm still confused because I'm looking at the rent roll from the subject property leases. WAA is 850 net, Menzies 875 net, Swissport $10 net, Sky Cafe $10 net, Swissport $9 net, $9 net again, $9.30. These are all listed on page 2 of my brief. So 15 of these rents are above 825 net, which is the starting point in our calculation. We start with the net rent times the leasable area. I see very little below 825 net.
Except they're all subsidizing Canada Revenue Agency. Because that's the nature of this business, this business complex.
So that's fair. So you don't accept these as net rents?
No.
Okay, no further questions then.
Thank you. Mr. Lorindo.
I think you both brought up the last time it came before the board. That was a recommendation from the city, wasn't it? It wasn't.
Yeah, they recommended it, and the board made no.
They didn't change it.
No, it was.
They just went with the rec.
Yeah, we had a brutal panel. You weren't there, none of you were there. They just took the rec and I appealed it, and I have.
So it is being.
Yeah, I think I got every year under appeal back to 2000. And when I first ran into Rudy, I'm trying to remember when that was. It was 2015, 14. Every year under appeal.
Okay.
Because to be fair, I'm glad we're spending some time on this, but, with 20 minutes usually to present a case, and we're talking about a fairly complex issue of estates in land, breaking it out, and honestly, I haven't given it this much thought, and finally this year, this is about the clearest I can do on this, is to separate the two estates, the leasehold and the fee simple. Sorry, I wouldn't even be them. Well, they're two separate. Yeah, I know you understand what I mean.
Good.
In previous years, I think we were looking for just the earnings, forget about everything else, and we were looking for. Is it simpler and easier to explain? Yeah, we were just looking at the actual paid income, $370,000 subtracted the land and capped at high, and looking for $2.5 million, and we didn't get that. And I don't think it was a question of the approach didn't have merit. I think it was just a question of this is a very unique property, and I think I got the feeling they wanted to kick it upstairs. And that's with this property, with the complexity, maybe they were right that it needs a couple of days of hearing and review to really go through these issues. I don't know, but this year, this is the one that kept me up nights finally trying to figure out how to present it, and I came up with this last night, and well, actually yesterday, and
I think you've answered this question. Maybe you can do this in summation. You can give us a little more, if you want, in summation.
I thought you wanted to hear my life story.
So it's your position that when this lease runs out in, is it 25 it's been extended to?
Yes.
It's your position that these buildings will be razed?
I was told that would be the issue. I think they have a mindset of likely lodging or multi-purpose and expanded parking. I've heard that there might be a smaller customs facility, but they're hoping maybe to get another lodging facility on.
I guess I get another question. This is government land.
It's the Queen's.
It's the Queen, so it's not taxed, is it?
Okay, the exemption for airports extends to runways. Not every part of it. There's a limitation. I think Mr. Penner probably has the breakdown of that section of the Act of what's exempt and what's not. But it's in the Act. Look it up.
So the lands they lease are taxable.
Well, that's another issue. That's why we've always argued in the past, because the fee simple, the land may not even be taxable.
Right.
It could be, there's a value there, but it's exempt from taxation, which is why we've always focused on the leasehold. And so I didn't make an appeal on class, but on that. So I have no grounds on it, so I have to stick with the value. You could break it down that way, and then I could get my legal counsel to file a letter.
I don't think we need you to look up the Act now.
No, I was curious about it. Yeah, okay.
You haven't appealed the classification, as you said. So
No, we have not.
I'm good. Sorry I brought that up.
Oh, yeah, well, no, I just gotta write that one down now.
we can all look it up at home. We all got it. We all have the Act.
Yeah.
I have no questions. No more questions. Mr. Penner, anything in summation?
I'll summarize. So what we have here is 2 buildings on leased land generating significant income. We have subject leases in place, net rents from $8.50 to $10. We have supporting comps that support that, ranging from $8 to $10. This is what's actually happening here today, and taking out any speculation, this property is performing very well. The thought that these leases are actually subsidizing Canada Customs, there's no evidence to that, and if they are, Canada Customs only has 958 square feet, about 1% of the total. It wouldn't be a significant subsidy at any rate. So we have good rents in place, net rents, and that's the starting point. We've applied market parameters, as we always do, in a fee simple interest. We think our value is fair and equitable. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Mr. Neufeld, would you like to make a summation?
Sure. This is a difficult property to deal with, and we were dealing with it, I suppose, in a very cursory manner. Just one point to make very, very clear is that the assessor's analysis and adjustment of the statements is incorrect. I have in front of me a statement from 2013, and there is an incredible consistency in their earning. They're making home roughly $370,000 a year. They purchased it on the basis that they felt that this revenue stream was going to continue to dwindle until the end of the period, at which time they would be terminated, and it's gone. And at that point in time, they were, the government, the airport authority, doesn't take a dislike to people who want to get rid of their tenant. It's just now an obsolete building. They feel it could be turning over more money elsewhere, and that's their right. So that's what's going to happen. So the earnings that he is taking home, this company that owns it, the leasehold, is $373,000. No question about it. And then, in addition, by the way, I failed to mention this, is that the property manager at the time, and this is from 2013, Huntington, is Rudy Braun, who now has the desk a few down from me and now works at Collier's. So I'm not concerned at all about our read of the statements. We know what we're talking about. The only issue here in my mind, is a question of how do you get a total value for the two sets of rights being expressed. One, again, a time-limited return that in 8 years is over, and the other is the underlying value of the land. I agree they both have to be considered. I've done a simple addition of them because I'm looking for a simple solution to a difficult problem. I'm comfortable now that this is probably the approach we're going to have to take forward, although now I'm thinking about exemptions, but that's another issue altogether. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just need to redirect, if I may. So the statement was made that my calculation or my adjustment was incorrect, but if we look at the rent roll, the actual occupied space, you'll see that rent income comes very, very close to the reported rent income on the mailer, and that has no value to the vacant space. So that is already net of vacancy, and that's why that adjustment was made. This number here is already net of vacancy. All right?
Mr. Chairman.
And you're free to do the calculation if you
I
will.
think we're straying back into territory, an argument that was covered, and all it's going to do is provoke a response from me, which you're not going to like, about people adjusting statements.
Yes, and you have not said so far that he has adjusted the statement incorrectly. Well, not incorrectly, but I don't want you to imply that he's done anything illegal here, because you haven't yet.
Exactly. So let's curtail the discussion, and I'm happy to submit an old statement for you to review to see the consistency. There's a difference in the method of reporting that this company started and stuck with. I have 700 properties, and I bet you're going to get 500 different types of statements. There's no consistency in them, and this one is totally different. Never seen anyone like it, but it was the way it was produced for.
And that's the 2013 statement.
Yeah, and this is the one that the source material for relaying into this. So it's written up differently.
And you haven't presented that as yet?
I have in a previous year. It's been presented.
But I mean today, you haven't presented it?
No. It's just the way that they write up their vacancy is different.
I think that we can...
they'll just plug it in here as a non-recoverable operating cost.
I think that we can, this is no time for new information.
No,
we understand that. They have different statements, different years.
And it was submitted by the owner who, to be fair, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, I think have a fair deal more experience in financial matters than the assessment department.
Well, we'll end on that then.
Shut her down.
Wait a minute, Mr. Chairman. Have we dealt with 1895 Wellington? Have we finalized that file?
No, we haven't. We will
Have to deal with it.
deal with it. So this will end Mr. Newfield's part, and thank you for coming.
Oh, see you 1 o'clock.
You won't see me. You're back at 1?
I don't know, there's a cancellation too. I gotta go check if mine was on that list. I got 2 hearings.
Okay, I guess we could do that. We're just gonna hear it anyway. We'll leave it on, so let's just do it.
Okay, Mr. Penner, if you would like to tell us about 1895 Wellington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The file number is 19-1901. The roll number is 07569126200. The address 1895 Wellington Avenue. There was a preliminary matter on this. We were asking for non-compliance, a deferral penalty due to the fact that no expenses were provided on the mailer. The support